Be right back.
I love 70s New York. It was like the Wild West, and I kind of came of age in there. I just thought it was fantastic because you could do anything and get away with it.
Cheshire, Connecticut is situated about 80 miles northeast of Manhattan. It's the type of suburban town that typifies traditional New England life, with its emphasis on wealthy middle-class order and Stepford wife conformity. Some might call it swanky, quintessential small-town USA. Lots of charming homes lined with white picket fences and schooner-sized waspy heritage. It's also home to the Farmington Canal, once a watery artery of commerce that gently winds its way through Connecticut's landscape. For a young Roderick Edward McNeil, soon to be known as Legs, it was a wild playground filled with snakes and turtles. His family home was just a short walk across the adjacent train tracks, an unusual yet convenient place for adventure. Little did he know this quiet corner of nature would one day push him south to a world of misfits, dropouts, where he would truly find his place.
When I came along, I was like, where's the party? I was the black sheep of the family.
Hey there, sorry for the interruption, but if you're enjoying the show, please leave a review or a comment. For the latest news and updates, make sure to also follow us on Instagram at Destroy Punk Podcast. Thank you, and now back to the show.
Live from Schwanksville, it's Destroy with Legs McNeil and host Richard Smith.
They are punk rockers.
Raw, outrageous and crude.
The new craze, they told me.
More into chaos than anything else.
People really don't understand what kids want.
Worthless, nasty.
They're a hero.
Welcome to Destroy, a podcast about how the punk movement of 1976 spawned a cultural revolution still being felt today.
You have to destroy in order to create.
Destroy is produced by Be Right Back Studios. Visit berightbackstudios.com/destroy to learn more. If you're enjoying the show, visit our website, destroypunkpodcast.com, to learn more about every episode, including interview transcripts, show notes, music videos, curated playlists, and more. Thank you for listening. McNeil's formative years were marked by family tragedy. McNeil's father, Edward, died of stomach cancer when Legs was just 2 months old.
My dad died when I was born, so it was not good. And my mom, I think she got pregnant with me by accident. And the whole time she was pregnant with me, was dying, so she was not having a good time.
The impact of this early loss was compounded by the family's troubled history. His maternal grandfather took his own life, and his grandmother ended up in a mental institution, leaving McNeil with a deep sense of instability and complexity.
We grew up pretty broke, and just everything in Connecticut just was bad, was just awful and terrible.
Those early experiences of loss, instability, and trauma had a lasting impact on McNeil, helping to shape his view of the world as a place of cruelty, absurdity, and ultimately rebellion. Adding to McNeil's sense of difference was his anatomical condition. Born with a physical anomaly where one of his legs was 2 inches longer than the other, he quickly earned the name Legs.
I liked Legs. I just wanted a good gangsterish name, I wanted to be a gang,
At the age of 16, he underwent surgery to shorten the longer leg, spending a year recovering in a body cast. The nickname stuck, and it would come to define him, becoming not just a personal moniker, but a symbol of his outsider status and eventual rise to punk iconography. Growing up in a small town where conformity reigned, McNeil began to realize he was an outsider, a square peg in a round hole. The town's social fabric was deeply divided into the staid, hippie, or jock dichotomy, but neither option appealed to him. His innate restlessness drove him towards rebellion.
The world was so fucking boring. You could either be a hippie or a jock, which neither one appealed to me. It was a nightmare. It was like McDonald's or Burger King. It didn't seem like there were many choices. The minute I could get out, I got out.
That feeling of suffocating conformity only intensified McNeil's yearning to find something more, something real, something radical. McNeil's first encounter with misfit energy came through music, particularly bands like the Velvet Underground, the Stooges, and the MC5, acts that would influence his punk aesthetic for years to come. These artists introduced McNeil to a world where sound and attitude transcended the blandness of mainstream culture.
I think New York will always be a place that people will dream about and move to, live out their fantasies.
In 1975, at just 19 years old, Legs McNeil found himself in the heart of a cultural explosion. Delusioned by the stale and corporate nature of mainstream rock, as well as the self-righteousness of the hippie movement, McNeil wanted something more. His rebellion against the status quo would take shape in the form of Punk magazine, a publication that would not only give the punk movement its name, but also become a cornerstone of its culture.
I was very fortunate that I got to hang out with Norman Mailer and William Burroughs, and they were very generous guys, you know. Fascinating time to be in New York.
McNeil's entry into New York City was the beginning of his immersion in the vibrant underground scene that was quietly but powerfully rising. This period marked a profound shift in both his trajectory and the cultural fabric of the time. The CBGB scene was teeming with the raw energy and defiance that McNeil craved. No longer would he be forced to choose between hippie or jock. The punk ethos would give him a new identity, a new world to belong.
If you went to CBGBs or Max's, you saw everybody. I mean, there were only about 200 or 300 people in the scene. I loved all of them. They're all brilliant. From the Dolls to the Patty, I loved it all. It was such a fun scene.
It was during this time that McNeil reconnected with his high school friend, John Holstrom, who had moved to New York to attend the School of Visual Arts. Holstrom, an art student with a deep passion for both comics and counterculture, was already immersed in the bohemian lifestyle.
I was living with John Holmstrom on 24th Street. John said that if we started a magazine, people would buy us drinks and want to get to know, you know.
It was through their shared love of garage rock, satire, and rebellion that McNeil and Holstrom hatched the idea for Punk magazine. Holstrom, who had studied under Harvey Kurtzman, the legendary Mad magazine founder, brought the visual sensibilities that would later define the magazine, while McNeil added the voice, irreverent, snarky, and above all, unapologetically punk.
I went to CBGBs and saw the Ramones and saw the Talking Head. When every band was so different, and it wasn't like what you were hearing. It wasn't like mainstream anything.
Together with Jed Dunn, the magazine's publisher, they decided to create a platform that would document, critique, and celebrate the emerging punk scene. McNeil came up with the name, choosing it because it was raw, ugly, and defiant, exactly what they wanted the magazine to represent. The debut issue of Punk hit the streets in January 1976, with the legendary Lou Reed on the cover, a perfect choice, as Reed was both an icon of the underground and a symbol of punk's defiant spirit.
John loved Lou, and Lou had gotten a lot of publicity because Lester Bangs had just written this arty magazine, and I think it was called Wanted Dead or Alive, you know, Lou Reed, for encouraging drug addicts and homosexuality to teenagers or something like that.
From its first issue, Punk magazine became the voice of a generation. The magazine wasn't just a platform for punk bands like the Ramones, Blondie, Television, and Richard Hell. It was a reflection of the attitude of the time. As McNeil described it, it wasn't just about the music, it was about challenging everything.
John wanted to call it Teenage News, and I thought that was a stupid title. Why don't we call it Punk? It's because what everybody had always called me.
At that time, no one even had a name for the phenomenon that was bubbling up in the downtown music scene, but Punk magazine was there to document it, to define it, and to give it a name. In doing so, McNeil and his collaborators not only captured the sound and look of punk, but helped to create it. The punk aesthetic wasn't just about the music, it was the DIY attitude, the way it looked, the way it felt, and the way you see the world differently.
We decided to call it punk before we went to see the Ramones and the CBGBs, though.
The magazine was made on a shoestring budget in their East Village apartment. They didn't have the resources of a big publisher. Instead, they made it by hand, collaging, typewriting, photocopying, and pasting up each issue. The result was a gritty, unpolished magazine that felt like a zine and read like a comic book. We didn't have money for fancy printing or layouts, we just made it happen, McNeil recalls. The magazine became an underground sensation, circulated by hand and sold in record shops.
I never thought what I did was shocking. Maybe other people thought what we were doing was shocking. I just thought it was normal.
Fans loved it because punk treated them like characters in a comic book, rather than products just to be marketed. The magazine captured the rawness of the scene, helping to create a sense of community amongst misfits, outsiders, and musicians who were otherwise being ignored or marginalized. As McNeil explains, it was a comic book version of a rock magazine with lots of snark and lots of attitude.
I think I was interested in the apocalypse, Get it over with, Dee Ramone was a brilliant songwriter, and I'd never met a weirder fucking guy. So weird, but he was so brilliant, I mean, he wrote, chewing out the rhythm of my bubble gum, the sun is out and I want some. It's not far to reach. We can hitch a ride to Rockaway Beach. I mean, come on, that's brilliant.
In 1996, over 2 decades after the birth of punk magazine, Legs McNeil wrote Please Kill Me, the uncensored oral history of punk, a book that became a groundbreaking piece of work capturing the true essence of punk's chaotic and vibrant energy through the words of the musicians, artists, and outsiders who were there.
I think the real talent in the Sex Pistols was Glenn Matlock, because he wrote all the songs and they're great.
Please Kill Me didn't just document the scene's highs, it also relived its lows, highlighting the dysfunction, the violence, and the personal destruction that were often intrinsic to the punk lifestyle. Rock and roll is so great, people should start dying for it, McNeil famously wrote.
Sid was not the brightest guy in the world. He was dumb. There are many options on who could have killed Nancy.
For McNeil, punk was never just about the music. It was also about the apocalypse and the obliteration of everything that had come before, the lifestyle of debauchery and hedonism for all of those trying to escape.
I think more people died of cancer than drugs. It was taking so many of them, and it was fun. And God, I miss Quaaludes. But the real truth of the matter is more people died of cancer.
As another decade slipped by in 2005, McNeil stepped into another hedonistic world, one that many tried to avoid and few truly understood. Porn. But it wasn't your typical voyeuristic perspective often employed by the mainstream. Instead, McNeil's curiosity led him to uncover the raw hidden truth beneath its surface.
Porn went mainstream in '72. I was there at the beginnings of it. So I was not intimidated or threatened. So it was very easy for me to move from punk to porn.
The Other Hollywood, McNeil's uncensored oral history of the porn industry, wasn't about sensationalizing the industry's dark corners. It was about peering into its shadows and asking the hard questions, revealing the hidden humanity behind the headlines, showing a side of the industry that wasn't just about what was scandalous. It was about the people, the actors, the producers, the crew, those who lived in this world, often misunderstood, exploited, but also driven by complex, unspoken motives.
When I was at the hippie film commune, I decided to make a porn movie. And I was the assistant director. I liked a lot of the porn people. A lot of the porn people I didn't like too, but they were having a lot of sex. So why not do it on film and get paid for it? Better than getting a job.
McNeil's perspective was never about looking down from some moral high ground. It was about trying to understand what drove people to make choices that others deem unthinkable. Because McNeil wasn't interested in judging, he was interested in listening, in learning, a true testament to his ability to connect with the most marginalized voices and present their truths without sensationalism or caricature.
Porn's become even more dangerous with the whole Me Too movement and sexual assaults. And
in a world often concealed by shame and morality, McNeil stood firm in his belief that everyone, no matter their world or their choices, deserved to be heard. He wasn't driven by sensationalism or voyeuristic curiosity. His explorations instead were driven by a relentless quest to understand the unseen, to pull back the layers of society's forgotten corners and capture the raw humanity lurking in places most would rather ignore.
it's 2025, and we're still having to fight over people having the right to vote in this country. It's just awful. Whoever thought, growing up in the 60s, Martin Luther King, that it would be reversed?
For over 40 years, McNeil's journey has never been a straight line, more of a winding road that's pulled him further and further into the margins, always seeking what others shied away from, consistently digging deeper, always diving further into the darkness where the rules are sometimes forged in blood and survival.
New York was run by the mafia then. There was always somebody you could go to get something fixed.
Frank Lucas was a man whose hands were stained by heroin and whose legacy would forever be intertwined with the streets of Harlem. A notorious 70s smack kingpin, Lucas was best known for his role in the drug trade and for masterminding a sophisticated heroin operation that used a direct pipeline from Southeast Asia. His story is infamous for its scale and audacity.
Mark Jacobson, who came to Punk magazine, I met him in '76 to do a story on us for the Village Voice. I always loved his writing, and he wrote this great story on Frank Lucas called The Return of Superfly.
Lucas's street-mart ingenuity often bypassed the traditional middlemen of the drug trade, procuring heroin directly from the source, famously dubbed the Golden Triangle. His operations were ruthless, and his rise to power came with both extraordinary wealth and deadly violence. Violence no more deadly than the death of Melvin Combs, the father of music mogul Sean Diddy Combs, who was connected to Frank Lucas through the criminal underworld of Harlem.
He goes to the Golden Triangle, goes to Bangkok, Thailand, in the middle of the Vietnam War, and makes a deal to buy a kilo of heroin for $4,200 a kilo when the mafia is selling it in the United States for $40,000 or $50,000.
In 1972, in a tragic twist of fate, Melvin Combs was murdered, a crime that remains shrouded in mystery. It is speculated that his death was linked to the broader world of organized crime and drug trafficking that Frank Lucas was a part of. McNeil uncovered this connection while investigating the underworld for his documentary Pusher Man, highlighting how the criminal world often intersected with the lives of the powerful, creating a murky web of violence, power, and loss.
But I had never actually read the article, and I bought the book and I gobbled up the article, and I said, this would make a great film.
From the outset, McNeil's curiosity was never about the glamour or glorification. It wasn't about the cartels or the power or the hype of crime. It was about the people, their struggles, their choices, the raw, visceral truth of lives caught in the margins, capturing the humanity behind the crimes. As he delved deeper into Lucas's world, McNeil's unflinching curiosity led him to another revelation, the murder of Melvin Combs, a tragedy that connected the world of crime with the world of stars. This wasn't just a story of gangsters or moguls, it was a story of survival, of people trying to carve out their place in the world that had long forgotten them. I've always wanted to understand the things that most people don't want to see, McNeil has said. In Pusher Man, he wasn't interested in the easy answers, but the truth beneath the surface, the kind of truth most people turn away from. What McNeil found was not just darkness, but people struggling to exist, and that was his gift, to see what others missed. He didn't judge, he listened. He didn't sensationalize, he humanized. He found meaning where others found chaos.
I think I learned very early on that 90% of what American culture produced was crap, complete bullshit. But it was that 5 or 10%. There was always a book I wanted to read. There was always a movie I wanted to see. There was always a TV show I wanted to watch. You know, there's so many great, fascinating stories out there.
From the streets of Harlem to the neon lights of the adult film industry, to this day, McNeil has always scratched around the edges of the places most try to avoid. Whether it's punk, porn, or the criminal underworld, McNeil has always sought to uncover the complexities of those who lived outside the mainstream. And his approach has always been the same, brutally honest with a relentless desire to understand.
I want to know about these people's lives and what they're doing and how they got ideas and stuff like that. That's more interesting to me.
Whether he was capturing the anarchic energy of the punk scene or peeling back the layers of the adult film industry, McNeil has never shied away from the raw and unpolished and has never been interested in exploitation. Only the truth. The messy, complicated, often painful truth that makes us human. The annihilation, the destructiveness, the self-pity, and doubt.
I didn't think I'd make it. I was not planning on living to be 69.
McNeil is a living legend whose perspective on the punk scene not only helped define it, but also capture its spirit and nascent DNA. It was never just about music for him. It was about rebellion, rejecting conformity, and building something new out of a past that only celebrated acquiescence. And when that world turned rebellion into a commodity, McNeil, ever the outsider, turned his frustration into art.
Seems like it's a rite of passage nowadays. Kids become of a certain age and they join the band with their friends and dye their hair green and go through this whole punk thing.
In a world obsessed with the shiny, the easy, the digital, McNeil has remained a constant critic of the sanitized, a champion of the misfit, finding meaning in those who refuse to play by the rules.
I hate the modern world. Destroy the fucking modern world.
And his writing has been a testament to them all. The outcasts, the rebels, the ones who dared to be different when the world demanded conformity, because true art always comes from breaking down the walls that surround us.
I didn't fit in anywhere else. I couldn't play sports, and I didn't want to be a hippie.
In the years to come, McNeil's legacy will be more than the pages of punk. It will be in the voices he amplified, the stories he told, and the truth he brought to light. The stories about those living on the edges struggling to be heard, from the Ramones to Frank Lucas, in the chaos of punk, in the darkness of the underworld, in the rawness of the misfits.
People really hated this stuff. And then disco came in and disco took over. I think all the people in Brooklyn, all the guys at the discos, I mean, Saturday Night Fever really was, you know, it really was a scene in the outer boroughs of Manhattan, you know, Queens, and they liked that music. They didn't like the Ramones. They didn't like the Dolls or the Velvets. It was too weird. They wanted music that they could dance to and show off to. And in New York, there were a lot of underground discos and lofts. A lot of gay discos were starting to be a mix of gay and straight people, which is an interesting phenomena to happen at the same time. So disco really won. No one wanted punk.
To this day, McNeil is still searching for humanity in places most people dare to look, asking all of us to look deeper, to listen harder, and to find the truth that many refuse to believe.
I think things will just get dumber and dumber and dumber, as they have been.
My name is Richard Smith, and I'm your host. This has been another episode of Destroy.
I don't want to be buried in no pet cemetery. I mean, come on, it's brilliant stuff.
The music for this show is written and composed by Tokyo Iconic. My name is Richard Smith, and I'm your host. I'm a filmmaker, an art director, and once upon a time I was part of the big 80s. I designed record covers for Depeche Mode, I danced with Bono, discussed art with Mick Jagger, and drank tea with Susie Sue. I also grew up during those turbulent times in England in the late 70s and was driven by the do-it-yourself ethos of punk. I obsessed over bands like Joy Division and New Order and went on to work for the album cover designer Peter Saville. I believe that year, that moment in 1976, when a bunch of foul-mouthed yobs cursed and swore on national television, changed the future of culture forever, and is what brought us to where we are today. So where do we go from here? Will emerging new technologies be the catalyst that tears down the walls of mediocrity, throwing culture and society into chaos and revolution again? We'll have to wait and see. This has been another episode of Destroy. Thank you for listening. Destroy is a Be Right Back Studios production. Learn more at BeRightBackStudios.com. And please tune in again for another episode of Destroy, the Influence of Punk podcast, wherever you listen or download. Be right back.